Hello and welcome to the EML F1 Season 8 Championship, and today you join us here at the Mexican Grand Prix for round 10 here in Mexico City, created originally in 1959 by two Formula 1 drivers, namely Rodrigo and Pedro Rodriguez, two brothers, very famous Mexican racers who actually managed to convince the president to create this racetrack. So it's basically a government-funded racetrack, which I think is really cool. Quick little track guide for you here. It's a 2.7 mile long circuit with 17 corners and 3 DRS zones, allowing plenty of overtaking opportunities into various corners. It has a healthy mix of both fast, slow and medium speed corners, with a couple straights mixed in between as well. Slipstreaming will definitely be on the checklist today, the bingo, if you will, the bingo game. Anyways, let's have a look at the standings. Last week we were over at Singapore for round 9 of the championship, and it was high intensity all the way, constant action between the race leaders and podium sitters until an early safety car put a stop to that. Well, it didn't actually. In the safety car and in the ensuing pit stops that followed, some of the teams had to pit both of their cars at the same time, and as a result, the second car managed to pick up a 3-second time penalty effectively over the rest of the grid and thus fell behind, and that was for the EVR and AMS teams. As a result, their really hot rivalry continues to rage, with Evolution Racing now on 233 points, with Alien Motorsports 212. QSL had a shot at a podium finish, but on the final lap and the final scrap, if you want to call it that, one of the QSL drivers unfortunately crashed out and DNF'd on the final lap. It was a last lap the scrap. There's no other word for it. F1AF in P4 with 132 points. Nothing really to speak about there, although the battle for P5 is heating up, with Esports PEC, Deluxe Esports, FRC Esport and XPG all having a go at that P5 position. XR8 struggling, and HRT, despite a strong performance over the last 2 weeks, also struggling to catch up to the rest of the pack, but they have been at a deficit throughout the entirety of the season and they've just been struggling. Our driver lineup for this evening: DLX, we have Thor and Alberto, with Enzo and Nobin driving for FRC. KJ and Volker join EVR for tonight, as well as the Argos and Kra driving for HRT. Fake and Flame are back on for XPG, with Misha and Knight once again driving for AMS. F1AF are hosting Bibin and the Grandada, while XR8 are completely non-existent tonight. Raw Ruers and Lacey are driving for PEC, while Kart and Vaco round out your drivers for this evening. And to those of you who are joining us for the first time, maybe welcome. My name is Yanis Mayer. I'll be hosting the action for you guys tonight, and I have been hosting the action throughout the season so far. This is what our calendar looks like. We are now at round 10 of 12. We only have 2 more races to go after today, and of course things are still on edge. Last week, of course, we had that battle between EVR and AMS heating up, and a little point deficit between them is still... it's still there. Something could happen into these last 3 races of the season that could throw everything out of balance. Or we could see EVR maybe flying ahead. Anything could happen. Our point system is slightly different from F1, with only 22 points on offer for the race win, while the rest of the points stay pretty much the same. 18 points for P2, 15 points for P3, and P4 gets 12 points. However, from there, it is only a 1-point difference per position, meaning that the top 15 score instead of only the top 10, as in real F1. Drivers can also pick up an extra point for pole position and the flying lap as well. Now, with all that out of the way, let's head trackside, shall we? So, let's get the graphics up real quick. Lap data and track map on the bottom of your screen. And we are currently following KJ, who in the past has put in some strong performances for EVR, scoring 1 or 2 of their pole positions. And I think Hold up, before I just say I think, let me actually get the stats up. KJ has, I want to say he has scored a podium for them, but I suspect he was one of the drivers that unfortunately towards the start of the season had incredible pace during qualifying and the race, but spun out during the race. And unfortunately he was one of the drivers to start what we do not want to become a legacy. And they have managed to turn it around. I think at around round 4, round 5, they started changing things up and they got back into it. And as a result, they've actually scored 7 podiums in a row, although they have only 2 race wins to their name running, while a 3rd race win is also in the bag a little earlier on in the season. However, they are currently on a 2-win streak so far, so tonight could be their hat-trick of race wins. Now also, a quick little note on the format. Again, if this is your first time joining us, welcome. The format for this evening is a short qualifying format, which is about 18 minutes of qualifying, followed by half race length. So the action is hot and fast. Pit stop action still takes place though, so do keep your strategy minds on. Mine sucks, so I'm not quite sure whether I could lead you too well through that. all the usual pit stop fun that happens around midway through the race. At the moment then, in qualifying, Lacey is on pole position. Lacey's had some particularly good performance in the mid-season, picking up from Red Flame Joe, who had an absolutely brilliant performance through the first 3 races of the season. And as he stepped back, Lacey stepped in and also helped the team along. But unfortunately, the other drivers haven't really managed to contribute too much. And Lacey, yeah, also still struggling slightly. However, tonight, on pole position, PEC they've been infrequently on the podium positions and in pole position, but unfortunately during the race things just usually happen between them. Raw Ruers trying to make up for that in P5 at the moment, the other PEC driver out on track this evening with a 113.8 as opposed to the 113.3 set by Lacey in pole position, so 0.4 seconds difference there. However, we do have our AMS and EVR drivers out on circuit right now doing their flying laps. Misha being one of the Alpine EMS. EMS? Yeah. Is it? Sorry, my brain AMS. Sorry, my brain's kind of taking a dive downwards. Volker is out on circuit as well for EVR alongside KJ. Again, we've had some great stuff from them in the past. Josh is also a driver to keep an eye on, driving for XPG tonight, and he actually also managed to secure a fast lap, and I think it was a podium in China as well, one of 3 podiums for XPG, which they actually managed to secure last week. Unfortunately, it wasn't the podium that Josh scored, it was Neon who scored the podium for XPG in China, round 3, but you know, he was still up there. He was basically racing for the race lead, but unfortunately post-race penalties interfered, and as a result he is unable to take a podium that race. Misha comes across the line to set P2, the 113.5. KJ will be the next to keep an eye on, although his sector 2 time is 0.2 off the pace. Let's see what Lacey can do though, coming around the final corner now. And across the line, no improvement there. 0.2 off the pace. What can KJ do? KJ dives into the pits. That time is already lost. Kart and Vaco just set their lap times for QSL, which is also fairly decent from the Haas team. They are in P6 and P7 at the moment. And it's good to see the Grandada back out on track. The one driver that has managed to... Sorry, I don't know what I'm saying. The one driver that has managed to secure a couple podiums for F1 AF this season. The only podium scorer for F1 AF at this point. Hopefully, we could see Bibin come to the rescue, or not. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Good evening, Maze and Funky Chicken. Apologies for not addressing you guys yet. I was just getting into the rhythm already. I was already kind of fired up for the action. Hope you guys are doing well. Hopefully everyone watching is doing well. Hope you all have had a brilliant day and week. We are, of course, Wednesday in a 7-day week, so we are halfway through. We're halfway to the next weekend. And we actually had Mother's Day just last weekend. And next weekend we've got the Japanese Grand Prix. So it's a pretty good start to April, in my opinion. Lacey comes into the pits, and a quick explanation of the qualifying, kind of the usual qualifying strategies that these drivers have. The usual strategy is to only put about 3 laps of fuel in your car. 1 out lap, 1 flying lap, and then 1 in lap. And usually, that's all you need. The reason they do that is, of course, the lighter the car is, the faster it's going to be, less weight, less drag, etc, etc. But as well, it comes with the tyres too, because if you end up doing too many laps on the same set of tyres, they, of course, overheat fairly easily. But, you can see some variation in this strategy. I've seen drivers go for 2 flying laps and then an in-lap, and that's usually what they do towards the end of the qualifying session. We are now about 7 minutes from the end, and drivers will probably get another 2 or 3 laps in, depending on what their strategy is for qualifying, of course. Of course, while we were talking, I'm saying of course quite a lot. That's obviously, that's the same synonym. Sorry, Knight is on pole with a 113.3 and looks like he's still going for another pole lap time as he absolutely sends it through the stadium section. Turns 14 through 16. If he dives into the pits now, it'll be a shame. Yes, he does. But Knight on pole position for AMS right now, and he has managed to score 2 pole positions for AMS in the past as well. They've had some decent runs in terms of the pole position over the last couple of weeks, but it's kind of been broken up by a PC, it's been broken up by one of the EVR cars last week. So it's going to be interesting to see this battle for pole position. Both EVR cars are currently in P5 and P6, with 2 Alpines, a PEC and an XPG separating them from that position. So, Misha out on his flying lap. Josh also on his flying lap, just a little bit ahead. So is KJ and Volker. Volker actually set the fastest lap time in the first sector. Lacey's also on an out lap, so we've got plenty of action to watch now into the final 5 minutes of qualifying. Here comes Volker across the line. What can he do? Up to P3. We've got Misha a little further down, and KJ will be the next driver to come across the line to keep an eye on. Kart will also come across the line, but unfortunately not yet. He'll come after KJ. There's KJ. Kart now takes P4. Good stuff from him. Misha has already gotten a better second sector, 0.6 improvement for him. What can he do now into the final sector? 10th improvement into sector 2, sorry, not 0.2, that was sector 1. At the moment, everything's still up in the air for pole position at the moment. Knight still holding on with a 113.3, an improvement from Volker, Kart and KJ. What can Misha do? Can he improve to help out his teammate? Yes, he can. He can lock out the front row of the grid for AMS. Lacey, though, looking to change that. Lacey looking to get either in between those two or take pole position. I reckon pole position is on the cards for the driver in this Sauber. He'll be the next to come across the line to set a competitive lap time. Potentially Volker or Kart, again depending on the strategy at play. Whether it's 2 flying laps, whether it's only 1 flying lap. These drivers have maybe 2 laps in the tank, I think. 2 laps to go after this, really. And it's a 400th improvement for Lacey, and that will actually put him right between Knight and Misha. Now he just needs to find an extra 400ths to make it an 800th improvement to take pole position here across the line. What can Lacey do? Lacey takes pole position with a 113.2. There we go. Good stuff from the Sauber. And unfortunately, Josh has invalidated his lap time. The Grand Data on a 4/10th improvement. That will put him on a 113.1. Are conditions maybe improving for these drivers out on track? I'm not sure. Well, Sector 1, no, actually, sorry, that's an 8/10th. Sorry, the 4/10th improvement was from last lap. The graphic takes a bit of time to update, unfortunately. Whoa, and a big moment for the Grand Data as he hits the wall. Fortunately, no major damage. I mean, he's lost half his front wing, which, might team major, but obviously they can just swap that out fairly easily and then get back out on circuit. So I reckon he's still got a lap in him. He's still got a fast lap, a flying lap in him. Vaco invalidated his lap time. Kra also invalidated his lap time. Now, for those of you who have joined a little later on in the season, the Ferrari has been absent from most of the races this season. In fact, it's only very recently that the HRT team have taken up the Ferraris, and on their second time out this season back in Las Vegas, they managed to score a podium, P2, in the form of Liagos. Last week, unfortunately, things didn't quite go their way. They did have a car fighting up in the top 5, top 10 positions, but at the end of the day, nothing came of it. So we could potentially see some good stuff from HRT over the course of this season as well. We've only got 3 races left though, so really they're just trying to fight to not be last. FRC, unfortunately, one of the teams further down the grid who are struggling slightly. XR8, actually the closest contenders for HRT to deal with when it comes to points in the team's championship. But of course, in terms of pace, HRT have shown themselves to be some good rivals to the drivers up at the top, such as Lacey, Knight, Misha, Volker, all those usual drivers up there. Gabza had a great fight with Lacey last week as well. So there's all these little battles, all these little rivalries that you can kind of keep an eye on, keep your gaze upon. And the main rivalry that seems to be going on is the battle between EVR and AMS for the championship lead right now. Of course, you saw 233 points is the leader, and yeah, it could all swing in one race. It's so close. So all AMS needs is a bad race from EVR for both drivers. Boom, they've taken the championship lead. So it's all going to come down to the wire, I think, when it comes to the Yas Marina Bay circuit. And you can see everyone now on their final laps. Liagos on a flying lap right now, coming out of turn number 3, out onto the DRS zone. And you can see everyone from the top 8 are on their out laps right now, and plenty of them are actually in view in your background. And actually, we haven't actually gone on board with these drivers to see what the circuit is actually like. The Argos now coming through turns 4 to 6 through Essa del Lago and Horquilla, and then into the S's. And this is, of course, where we saw Verstappen and Norris bang heads in the 2024 season, just as Verstappen started getting really aggressive and started defending his championship. Hopefully, we don't see too much of that tonight. And then, of course, into the stadium section here, Recta del Ovalo into Foro Sol through this section of turns 12 to 16. Then Peraltada, and across the line, what can Liagos do? Liagos takes a P5. Good stuff from the HRT, again showing that he's here to compete at a high level. We've got one of the AMS cars coming across the line, Misha in P3 still. Those guys up there. We've got Volker, the first kind of contender for pole position, in my opinion, to come across the line next. Volker currently in P4 with a 113.4. He needs a 2/10 improvement, and Liagos, of course, his qualifying session is over, so he doesn't need to worry anymore. 2 minutes remaining in the qualifying session. Final lap for everyone as Volker now comes across the line. What can he do in his fight for pole position? He takes pole position with a 113.2. Lacey is a ways back. We've got KJ coming across the line now. P4 for him. Kart takes P6. Lacey will come through at some point in the future. Raul Ruiz sets his time. Where is Josh? I think Josh just came across in P10. Lacey in P2. Unfortunately, nothing there for him. And Knight takes P2 for AMS. Now it's only down to Misha. He set the fastest first sector. What can he do now into the final sector? Is it going to be pole position for Misha? Is it going to be a top 3 for him? It is pole position indeed for Misha, who takes the lead position. P1 for Misha. He'll be starting from the front of the grid, and it is an AMS car once more interdicting the EVR guys. It is once more an AMS beating an EVR to P1 right from the get-go. And there we go, qualifying is complete. Some good stuff from our top 8. Everything was up in the air until the final lap. 3 thousandths separating Misha and Volker for pole position, with Knight in the other Alpine in P3. Unfortunately, KJ only managed to make P5, although last time he took pole position, so we could see some good stuff from the other EVR car, with Lacey up there in the top 5 as well. But join us in just a few moments for the race start, half race length. Grab yourself a snack, grab yourself a drink, and join us in just a few moments. Hello and welcome back to the EML F1 Season 8 Championship. And today you join us for round 10 here in Mexico City for the Mexico Grand Prix. Why not say Mexico? Why not say Mexican? This circuit was created in 1959 by two Mexican Formula One drivers, whispering into the ear of the Mexican president, and in my opinion that is one of the best backstories to a circuit. Literally asking the government to build a racetrack and they say yes. Brilliant stuff, albeit at a very high altitude of 2 kilometers, so the cars might be struggling slightly at such a high altitude, but we'll take it. Of course, we had a thrilling qualifying session, our top 8 all on the boards, all on the cards for pole position, but in the end it was an Alpine who secured it. Misha taking pole position for AMS, while we had an EVR in P2. Sandwiching that, we had Knight in P3, unfortunately not managing to improve to hold on to pole position. We then had Lacey in P4, and P5 was the other EVR car. So it's still pretty much all up in the air. We've got no clue who's going to come out on top into turn 1. It is, of course, a really long run down to the first corner, so we could see plenty of action down that main straight into the first corner. We could have plenty of side-by-side action. We could have plenty of slideways action as well. So, yeah, everything's pretty much up in the air right now, just as we are at 2,000 metres. As we wait for the cars to go out and start the racing. Third race win in a row on the line for EVR. An 8th podium finish on the cards here. We also have a 6th podium finish for AMS. Everything hinges on this race for these guys to set them up into the final 2 races of the season. Of course, we do have a break next week as well from the action, so our drivers then have got that 1 week of prep to get ready for the last 2 races of the season. So a good result here will set them up nicely for the final 2 races. Again, these last 3 races are going to be key. The final quarter of the championship, the final quartile, the final 25%, and that battle is less than 30 points between the race championship leaders. And again, that battle between AMS and EVR is the one to watch for now. However, of course, if both of them mess up, QSL could come through to take it. Vaco and Kart representing QSL tonight. Although, unfortunately, their qualifying performance wasn't too notable, but we've seen them do some great stuff from further down the grid. I'm thinking namely of Gabza with a few podiums and a couple race wins under his belt. We've seen some good stuff from QSL in the past. Lacey, of course, also driving for Sauber, put his car in P4. Again, another driver to not discount from these podium finishes, from these race winners. He will potentially be bringing home a 5th podium finish. Again, a lot of stuff on the line for a lot of teams. HRT in the top 5, just about. XPG in the top 10. But here we go, the lights come on. And it's go time. 17 cars go roaring down to turn 1 to start. 36 laps of racing, and it's a decent start from Volker. He takes the race lead right from the get-go. Misha can't do anything. He's now on that outside line into turn 1. Can we see some movement from behind? We've got Knight potentially looking around the outside into turn 2. It is, of course, an extended chicane, basically, and these 2 race leaders are still side by side. Volker comes out on top. We've got some drivers going off in the background, but it's still not over. These 2 are still side by side as they now head into turn 4. Essa Del Lago, and they're still fighting for the race lead, but at this point I think Misha has conceded the race lead here, and KJ managed to make a position on the Sauber as well, taking P4 away from Lacey. Cars up to P6, and the Argos has dropped down to P10, so some movement here from the top 10 in the first 6 corners of the racetrack as they now head into turn 11 into Recta dell'Ovalo, and it is Volker who has taken the race lead with the 2 Alpines behind them, Misha and Knight with his teammate KJ sandwiching them in probably the biggest Big Mac you've seen. Then we've got Lacey in P5 as well, rounding out your top 5 with Kart waiting for a mistake. Alberto in the DLX making a good start as well in P7, the Grandada in P8 too, so some good points finishes for these guys here. Noben retires from the session and the safety car has come out with less than a lap of racing. Wow. Virtual safety car in play with less than a lap under our belt. I did not expect the action to heat up this quickly or something to go wrong this quickly. We've had a safety car every single race over the last 3 weeks. Hopefully today we won't see a real safety car. Hopefully this will be the extent of the damage. We've seen some really messed up stuff on the safety car, including last week actually, when we had both EVR and AMS essentially get one of their cars demoted a few positions because under that double pit stop strategy, they had to wait. They physically had to wait because they were so close to each other. But the action is back underway at least, so no safety car, no real safety car out on circuit today. Kra in pit at the moment in P16 as he comes back out. I assume he's had something happen to his aero. Noben, of course, completely out of this race. The battle for the championship lead will, of course, resume on that main straight. Misha will have an opportunity into turn 1, I reckon, on Volker, but so will Knight. KJ potentially also getting involved in that scrap for these podium positions. Lacey as well. Again, don't discount him. We've also got Alberto 7/10 off of Kart, who is in the DLX, and the DLX is also making some good movement. Here's Lacey, though, alongside the McLaren into turn 1. Can he do it? Knight making the overtake on Volker, and Misha has also managed to do that. So both Alpines make their way past the EVR and are now in P1 and P2. Lacey made the move stick on KJ, but in the background that move is not quite over for KJ. He's not lost all the positions potentially tonight. He is under threat from Kart as well, but nothing comes of it unless that McLaren goes wide, and now QSL Kart is alongside. He's gone wide and he's taken the position off track. I reckon he'll have to he might have to return that position at the end of the day, but it was still nonetheless a good move down the inside into turn 4. At the moment then, we've got Misha and Knight, the two Alpines, the two AMS cars in P1 and P2, Volker in P3 with Lacey in P4, and the distance between Lacey and Volker is larger than the distance between the top 3. So again, some movement for the podium positions. Lacey could still potentially get involved depending on the exit here out of the final corner, out of Peraltada onto the main straight. Let's see what happens here. So 3/10 between them. Volker 3/10 behind two Alpines, 0.2 seconds. He's closing. Will the Alpine switch position here? No resistance from Misha as such. Into the braking zone we go, and they managed to make a positions move, but Volker not really managing to make any positions there or kind of close that gap. KJ has actually dropped to P7. Something's happened to KJ. Maybe he's just not having a great day here at Mexico. Maybe he's struggling with the setup of the car. Maybe there was damage to his vehicle. I have no clue what the issue is, but he's now down to P7 with Kart in P5 and the Grandada in P6. Now it's up to Alberto to make a position for DLX and hopefully take some well-earned points for the team. Now we're on to lap 4 already, heading into the second sector now, and Liagos has already picked up a 3-second time penalty, and that is most likely due to track limits. Bibin also with a 3-second time penalty in the other F1 AF car, but out onto the main straight. Look at how close Lacey is to the back of that McLaren as they head through Foroso, and again Peraltada out onto the main straight. There's a close gap between KJ and the Grandada though, so I could imagine KJ making a move back on that F1 AF for P6. But here we go, there could be something on the cards here for the Alpines. They switch places once again to keep that momentum going, and the distance between them and the EVR has closed somewhat. It's now 3.5 tenths or so. Lacey 4 tenths. And further back, Kart is actually also quite close to the rear of Lacey as they head into turn 4 now. Could there be a potential move here from the QSL into the left-hander? Not quite. We've seen a move from him on KJ before, and he managed to make it stick. Whether he'll have to give that position back post-race, I don't know. We'll let the stewards decide. Now through the S's, everyone keeping it nice and tidy. Kra and Flame swap positions. Flame struggling out in the XPG tonight, and Josh pretty much right where he started in P10, so not really going too well for XPG tonight. Vaco in P9, 1.4 seconds off of Alberto, outside that 1 second DRS window, if you will. Now, drivers who are within that DRS window is a long chain down to P8 from P1. Kart is one of the closer drivers. We could see a move here from the Haas on the Sauber, but up further to the front of the pack, we've got Volker closing ground on Misha, and this is the move for the McLaren down the inside into turn 1 to retake P2, but there is a bit of wheel banging as they head into the right-hander, and he has actually dropped back, and Lacey now picks up a offensive position right behind him. However, he drops back after potentially compromising his exit, and under DRS, it's a good run out of turn number 3 for Volker, who takes P2. And I wonder whether Misha did drop back just a little bit on the throttle, just to say, you know, sorry for the bump, I apologise, we're all good. QSL Kart's getting a bit squirmy in the background. He's now under threat from the Grandada. Could we see an F1 AF podium out here in Mexico tonight? That would be incredible to see. Again, infrequent, but third podium of the season for F1 AF, I'm not going to say no. QSL Kart also vying for that position. Lacey in P4, really close to the back end of the Alpine. Misha, and he wants a shot at that podium position as well. Knight up in front where he's used to driving. He's out on the race lead. He's comfortable being there. So is Misha. So is Volker. Let's see what they do into turn 1. Volker is now 3/10 off of Knight. We've also got a 3/10 difference between Misha and Volker, and it's even closer further down between Kart and Lacey. Everyone is closing ground. Here's Volker though, the move down the inside for turn 1. He's alongside and he's got that move pretty much done, but on the cutback, the Alpine tried to get a run, nothing there though, and it is once again an EVR taking the race lead. You've got Lacey under 2/10 behind Misha. Could this be PEC getting involved in this podium battle? Not yet. Again, just not quite enough oomph on the straights for the Sauber, and he just can't quite get into that battle. He's still in P4, but he's there nonetheless. He should not be discounted, mark my words, unless I've just casted a very horrendous commentator's curse. In which case, we might see Lacey drop down to P12. I have no clue. Liago started in P5, and I said, you know, watch this guy at the start, and he's now down in P13 with a penalty, so not too good. Lacey, though, alongside, almost into the stadium section. This is a great cam, and a little bit of contact there. I'm actually amazed the camera didn't fall off as they now head through Perotada once more out into the main straight. And look at the gaps here between our top 8, particularly P4 up to P8. Lacey right up behind Misha. Could this be the move? And it's actually 1.4 seconds, the DRS difference there. There goes the Haas. There goes the PEC. The Haas makes his way past as well. Lacey now on the inside for the corner. Can he hold on to it? Yes, he can. The Haas getting slightly sideways into that right-hander. And it is still Knight in the race lead with Volker behind. But now Lacey takes P4 and Kart in Lacey takes P3, Kart's P4, and even here comes the Grandada down the inside on Misha. Can he take another position away from the Alpine? The Alpine has dropped 3 positions already. Can he lose another one? Well, that's up to the Grandada to decide, although Alberto might have a thing or two to say about it. He's right up behind him as well, 0.3 seconds. And of course, KJ in P8 still trying to respond to the tragedy earlier. However, I'm looking at the gap here. Lacey, 1.2 seconds behind Volker. That DRS gap has opened up too wide for Lacey to get in and use the DRS. He's going to be under threat from Kart. Although on the exit, though, both leaders had a bad exit, so he's suddenly back into that little window. Will he get the DRS, though? Was he there at the DRS detection zone on the exit of turn 15? We'll find out in just a moment. Yes, he was, and so the DRS chain continues. 0.2 seconds between Volker and Knight, though, for the race lead here. Knight, again, unfortunately, there's just nothing he can do with no DRS on this straight. It is an incredibly long straight, and he can reach speeds of up to 360 kilometers an hour here, as we found out in 2015. But at the moment then, it is Volker who takes the race lead, Knight in P2, and Lacey still in P3. Misha right up behind Kart, trying to make up that position once more, trying to fight his way back up into the podium positions. And it's a similar story for KJ down in P8, with Alberto in P7, though, looking at his shot of glory into the P5 for DLX, maybe. Could we see a podium for the Red Bulls this season? It will be the first podium we see for them this season, if so. And again, nothing's quite off the cards. KJ, though, 0.2 seconds is going to put a stop to that aspiration, you could call it, right behind the Red Bull, and it's an old rivalry we've seen many a time last season in the real F1 world, and it's 0.4 seconds, 0.6 seconds between drivers now as they head out onto the main straight. These little bubbles, I guess, of drivers forming already. The top 8 still going, and there's a move there for the race lead, actually. Volker losing out to Knight, who had the DRS, of course, and Josh retires from the session. One of the XPG cars losing out P12. Wow. Okay, so XPG not having a good night at all, with Flame down in P15, and I wouldn't be surprised if he leaves the session at some point as well. But there is still a good fight going on between them down there in P13, P14 and P15. 0.4 seconds between Kra and Flame for P14. And there's a yellow flag in Sector 1. That'll be the XPG slowing down in the pits, or for some reason coming out on the AI. But he has DNF, so I can't imagine we'll be seeing him in action. And everything's starting to calm down. Everyone's getting into a rhythm. But again, it's always this one pot of boiling water that's just waiting to cook over, waiting to explode, or like a volcano rather than a pot of boiling water, because boiling water generally, you know, it takes time to simmer and then get up to temperature and then boil over, whereas volcano, yeah, same thing, but sometimes you might just have a massive eruption. And Volker looking to take P1 into turn 1. Again, same move we've seen plenty of times this evening. However, Lacey is now right up behind that Alpine. In fact, Kart is also up there, 0.3 seconds. Misha, half a second off both of them. The Alpine struggling tonight. Same for KJ, actually, who's already pitted. And that's an interesting thing to keep in mind as well. Pit stops happen at around lap 18 or so, with maybe a 2 or 3 lap kind of, I don't know, what do you want to call it, tolerance window each side of it. So essentially you've got like 5 laps in which to pit, but it's not a physical pit window. That's just generally when we see these drivers pit. In fact, we could have a quick look at their tyres. I know some drivers like, or some of the teams like to have a look at the tyres currently run by all the other drivers. It's mediums for our top 8, P9 to P12 are on hard, so that might be why KJ's struggling slightly in P10. And Kra has also retired. We've had 3 retirements this session already. And here are your penalties. Liagos, 9 seconds. Flame, 10 seconds. Roll with 3 seconds. And Bibin, 6 seconds. Here comes our race leader into the pits now. Maybe gambling on that yellow flag. Maybe thinking, oh, actually, that might be big. And so do some of the other drivers, actually. So everyone pitting fairly early tonight, in my opinion. Knight takes the race lead with Lacey in P2 and the Grandada picking up P3. And for the first time this season, we see 2 Williams up in the top 5. I theorised about it last time, and last time they both then ended up losing plenty of positions. So I'm not sure. Again, we'll have to wait and see. Commentator's curse, very much alive and well here at EML. Into the stadium section and out of Perotada. No, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong team. I was looking at the HRT of Liagos and Flame down in P12 having a battle here on the main straight. And honestly, usually some of the best battles are actually down at the bottom of the grid. They've got nothing to lose. They just need to go, catch up to the rest of the grid. Or if not, just race for points. I mean, at the moment, they are racing for some pretty decent points. The top 15 score in this championship. So at the moment, we've only got 14 drivers. That means a minimum of 2 points to be scored for the drivers if they manage to finish. And here we go. The other drivers now come into the pits. Lap 12 of 36, lap 13. So we could see some interesting stuff happen here. So Bibin stays out, though. Bibin's still out there on circuit. And the Argus receives another 3-second time penalty. Volker will be the next driver to come down the straight. Where will Knight and Lacey come out? There goes Volker. Here comes Knight and Lacey. And unfortunately, they've struggled to catch that. And they're all on hards now. So a little rejiggle of the podium positions as KJ makes the move on Knight for P4. He is, of course, on up to temperature hards as opposed to the very new hards put on by Knight. He's actually got both Alpines behind them, so some good stuff from the EVR squad, getting KJ back up into that top 5, and the Argos has retired from the session as well. Oh my goodness, we've had 4 cars retire from the session. We only have 13 cars now left in this race. Wow, things are happening. And not necessarily good, I might add. Not necessarily the best things. So at the moment then, DRS, who has it, who doesn't have it? Bibbin in the race lead, of course, won't have it. Folker in P2, 5.4 seconds off the race leader, 2 seconds to P2 for Kart. However, it's only 0.4 seconds between KJ and Kart, and of course it's got Knight and Misha all over the back of him. Lacey also there in P7 with DLX Alberto in P6, an ever-present threat with the Grandada in P9. He was actually doing really decently at the start, but unfortunately in the pit stops, it seems as though he has fallen behind slightly. There we go, and moves into the right-hander of turn 1, and we've seen some stuff. Folker in P2 still, KJ in P5. He just got overtaken by Knight as Kart is in P3, and Lacey still stuck in P7. So this train of cars from P3 down to P8 are all, separated by probably the distance or the thickness, you could say, of a piece of paper. Maybe a credit card as well, but definitely a piece of paper. Maybe folded 2 or 3 times. And I think last time I remember, paper can only be folded 7 times before it becomes impossible to be folded. An A4 sheet of paper can only be folded 7 times. A fun fact. Therefore, you make do with it what you will. I just, for some reason, have that as a random fact in my head. But all I know for sure is that Misha and Lacey seem very close to the back ends of each other. In fact, Misha is under heavy... Well, actually, Misha's right up behind KJ here for the move. There's a move between Kart and Knight as well for P3. Alberto getting involved here as well. P6 is Misha. And again, these small transactions, really, these little substitutes between drivers. Knight up into P3, up into the final podium position. Bibbin still leading the race, but Folker is closing the ground there. Knight 2.3 seconds off of Folker still. Kart 0.3 seconds off of Knight, with KJ 0.3 seconds as well. 0.2 seconds between Lacey and Misha, though. Again, these small gaps that we need to keep an eye on throughout this circuit. We've got another DRS zone coming up into the 3rd sector, into turn 12, Recta dell'Ovolo. Let's see whether we can have any moves into this corner. We've not really seen anything here. We've seen attempts at it, but we've never seen anything successful. Bibbin, though, struggling slightly. He is now only 1.1 seconds ahead of Folker, so that tyre compound, that tyre is struggling, and he's slowing down, and he might come under threat from Folker before the end of the lap. Knight takes the fastest lap, and actually he's under threat from QSL. Kart now, he takes P3 away from him. This battle between QSL and the AMS drivers. Lacey now makes a position on KJ, and Misha's looking for a position there as well, and I think I saw some contact there as well. Oh my goodness, things are happening all over the place. Is there a winglet missing for one of these cars? Lacey has got a decent run round the outside of KJ. Is going to turn into the inside line for this next section of turn 4, 5 and 6. Nothing happens, but Alberto fending off the Grandada, and there we go, the move on the inside for Grandada down in P9. Good stuff from the Williams, makes that move up into P8. And up at the top, Folker is now caught up to the back of Bibbin, maybe being slowed down actually, because he is now only 1.2 seconds ahead of Kart. Of course, had some DRS. They are actually making a little bit of ground if Kart and Knight just keep exchanging those positions without resistance. As long as they can keep that momentum going that they get from the DRS zones, they'll be fine. Folker looking towards the inside, but nothing there, and Bibbin still chooses to stay out on that hard tyre, and he pulls back in behind Folker now. Maybe he's going for an incredibly fast final lap attempt, maybe. There's a move from Knight for P3 in the background, makes the move on Kart, and even with DRS, Bibin cannot do anything into turn 2, and he is struggling. Misha now down the inside of KJ for P6. Again, this old battle between AMS and EVR for the championship lead. For the championship is unfortunately still all up in the air. Well, I mean, fortunately for us, because we get to see all the action. And Bibin is now just a moving target for many of these drivers, or almost a stationary target. He is moving at about 200 miles an hour, but it's still almost just as good as a stationary target for these other drivers, as long as they can make the move cleanly, efficiently, and quickly. Because getting stuck behind a slow driver is, yeah, it sucks. And actually, Flame also retires. KJ left the session. Oh my goodness, what's happening here? Oh my goodness, things are happening. We've got drivers all over the place leaving the session, leaving the race. Oh my goodness. So KJ down in P9, not having a good day at all. Wow, yeah, Flame also not having a good day in the slightest. Knight now, this age-old battle, why did I say old age battle? They are not probably, I don't know how old these drivers are really, so it could technically be an old age battle, you know, two 60-year-olds going for it. But at the moment, Knight and Volker racing for the race lead once again. We've seen this battle many times before, including at Silverstone, wow, Singapore last week. Kart in P3, 0.2 seconds off of these guys, and Lacey is 1.8 seconds behind these guys. The Grand Data in P6 is also looking at a position on Misha at some point, and Bibin has now filtered down to P7, and he's already 1.2 seconds behind his teammate. Again, the difference, the DRS makes the difference, bad tyre wear makes as well, is astonishing. And look at how close that QSL is to the back of the McLaren. He's right up on him. He's definitely got the DRS as they head through turn 16 and 17 again. Now we've hit our halfway mark. We have lap 19 going right now, and let's see what happens here. Volker's got the DRS. He's going to make that move on Knight happen really easily. Knight trying to defend slightly over to the left-hand side of the circuit still, and Kart not managing to make anything happen there. However, I think we saw some side-by-side action between Misha and the Grand Data. The Grand Data up into P5 ahead of the other Alpine. He seemed so dominant early on and even early in the race as well, but nothing happened there. 1.4 seconds though between Lacey and Kart, so that again, that DRS window, that 1 second DRS window is very important, and unfortunately for Lacey, since he's lost that, is not great. 1.1 seconds though. If we can close that gap, that would be great. Then we could still have a fight for the final podium position. Not that we won't have one. You know, we will still definitely see some good fighting from our top three. .6 seconds between them all. Kart 0.2 seconds. Again, it's almost as if every time we wait to see what happens to this next section, this turn 1 main straight. And at the moment, Kart is gaining on Knight, but Knight's gaining faster on Volker, and again takes the race lead. Raw Ruiz leaves the session. Oh my goodness. What is happening? We've lost 7 drivers this evening. We only have 10 drivers remaining out on circuit with 16 laps to go. Wow. So then, with KJ in P11, how many points does that score? So we've got Knight in P1 with 22 points, and we've got Volker P2 with 18 points. The Grand Data receives a 3-second time penalty. Kart, yeah, not really there. Misha, so P12, 11, 10. So we've got 32 points on the board for AMS, plus the fastest lap plus the qualifying lap. That's 34 points. Again, somehow it's miraculous that the commentator maths is actually working tonight. 34 points, and if it isn't, then definitely do let me know. It's P2 for Volker, P11 for KJ. So what that will mean in terms of the championship fight, yeah, it's going to be tough. Volker, though, looking for the 22 points for sure, looking for the extra 4 points ahead of P2. Knight trying to say something back about it, but unfortunately can't quite do it. Kart in P3, close to these guys as well. Potentially a move on the cards here for him. Down into 10-4, though we've only seen a fair few moves here. Not quite enough, though. 0.3 seconds, 0.5 seconds there. We've got 16 laps to go. Again, still everything really close here between our top three, and actually the Grand Dada's managed to close the gap to Kart. He made the move on Lacey a while back, and he's managed to close the distance to Kart to half a second. He's close now. 0.4 seconds between them again. Here we go, out onto the main straight. It's looking fairly close between Kart and Knight here. Could the QSL interfere in this race lead battle? It's half a second between Knight and Volker, 0.2 seconds, and the speed on the QSL is maybe slightly lacking, trying to keep the slipstream going on Volker as they change lead positions once more into turn one. Knight still in the race lead then, with Volker in P2, and Kart now making the move down into turn 4. He's now around the outside. The McLaren trying to defend into this complex of turns 4 to 6, but as far as I know, it's two right-handers into this next section. Just about enough space left between these two. Some great battling here for P2, but of course, while all this happens, we've got the race leader, Knight, pulling out ahead, potentially gaining an advantage over the rest. If he can build that 1 second gap over Volker, over Kart, they're so close in pace that it could still potentially result in, you know, if he can build that gap, you know, it means it's impossible to get there. 0.2 seconds, Lacey in P5, also one driver to keep an eye on. Kart again, 0.3 seconds. I don't know what it is. Something out onto the straight. The QSL just struggles. The Haas just can't quite get there. Volker, half a second. Again, we've only got about 10 to 12 drivers in the lobby at the moment. And for the first time, I think, in probably about 20 laps, we don't see an overtake into turn 1. The Grand Data currently P4, 0.2 seconds. Again, he's getting involved in this podium battle, and that brings Lacey into it as well. Misha still in P6, still on the back of the train, and unfortunately for Alberto, down on P7, he still can't quite get there. KJ back in for some reason, so it seems like it's not all game over for EVR yet. P11 still on the cards there. So 5 points for KJ, 18 points for Volker, that'll be 23 points, then 22, so 23 versus 34, that gap is closing. Okay, so, yeah, championship battle could again be coming down to the wire at Yas Marina. Again, we've got no clue what will happen next week. We've got no clue what will happen into the final 13 laps of today. We're more than halfway through. We're actually 2/3 of the way through. We've got 66.66 reoccurring percent of the race behind us. But here we go, the move from Volker, the move from Kart, trying to defend from the Grand Data, and the Grand Data shoved out the way, rudely I would say, by the Haas. And everything still again for the second lap in a row, all still in the same order. Knight still in the race lead, Volker P2, Kart P3, and the Grand Data in P4, with Lacey and Misha rounding out your top 6. The top 10 being then Alberto, Enzo, Faco, and Bibin, with KJ and Flame being P11 and P12. Of course, we do still have the gap between the Grandada. We've still got gaps all over to keep an eye on. There we go, the Grandada potentially having a look towards the inside of turn 12, but nothing there. No daylight for him. Maybe a bit of contact between the Sauber and the Williams, and that maybe gave the Williams a little extra oomph out onto the straight again through turn 16 and 17, through Peraltada, down into Recta Principale. Down the main straight, 0.4 seconds, 0.6 seconds between Volker and Knight. Again, that gap being too big to do anything about. Kart again closing some distance, but not able to get alongside. And KJ's just left the session again. Something's happened here. Something's happening here. Oh, and there we go, the McLaren feeling the need to cover the inside line slightly from Kart behind. We've seen some stuff from QSL in the past. We've seen some moves from him, and this could potentially spice up into the final few laps of the race. .2 seconds between Kart and Volker, 0.1 seconds between Lacey and the Grandada. Again, down into turn 12, really close between these guys. I can feel the tension brewing slightly. It's just starting to pick up now. We've got 12 laps of racing left. It's gonna get there. It's gonna start. It's gonna start warming up very soon. And look at how close these three are in P2, P3, and P4. Volker, Kart, and the Grandada. Here we go. This could be it. There's the move from the Grandada. There's the move from Kart. It's 3 wide, almost 4 wide down into turn 1 as Knight concedes the position. And it's still these three in the same order. Volker, Kart, then the Grandada, all managing to make their way past Knight in P4. Good stuff. Misha in P6. The two Alpines may be struggling here. Volker taking the race lead into turn 4. Though, could we see a move from the Grandada? Thought about it. He wanted to make it. Not quite there, though. This is how close it is between the two race leaders, and that's the gap behind. Just this train of P1 to P6 with Alberto 4 seconds off these guys a ways back, and Enzo another 8.8 seconds off of Alberto. So pretty much the top 6 are the guys to watch at the moment. Out onto the straight once again, setting themselves up for turn 1 as they head through the stadium section, as they head into Recta dell'Ovolo and Forosol for the 26th time. Kart may be going a little slideways, and that's allowed the Grandada right up behind him. But they need to keep their eyes on the prize again. We could see some battles here for the podium positions, allowing the race leader slip away unless the momentum can be conserved by not fighting too hard. And to be honest, there's not much you can do when you've got a car with DRS making the overtake. There we go. Kart going slightly on the defensive. Knight looking for a position there as well, but the Grandada didn't quite manage to get far enough alongside to take that position. And then that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's exactly how you're going to lose time. That's exactly how you are not going to get up into the race lead when you break your momentum. Whoa. My throat's already parched. Lap 27. Again, through the S's. Maybe a move into turn 12, but we haven't really seen anything there. It seems like such a good overtaking spot in theory, right? But in reality, yeah, no one really gets the run through the S's good enough to then have a lunge into turn 12. Oh, a little slideways from Kart on the exit of turn 15 through the right-hander. Could we see some moves for position here? Again, they need to keep in mind the race leader could be walking away with it if they fight too hard. 0.2 seconds between these guys, and the Grandada losing out on Kart as Knight makes the position, and he's right up behind Kart as well. Oh my goodness, and there's Volker, who's lost the race lead to Kart, and he's just about managed to keep a championship rival behind. He's just about managed to keep Knight behind him into turn 1. Now it's the Grandada right up behind Knight as well. Again, these two battling for race position, battling potentially for the championship win here. Again, this is the not the penultimate round, but the round before that. What would you call the third last round of the season? the final quartile round. I don't know, something like that. However you want to say it. 2 more races to go after this. Every point is going to matter at this point, and that's why Knight picked up the fastest lap at the start. That's why MS have already picked up a points for pole position. That's why they gave it 100% effort during qualifying. We had both AMS cars up there at the top. I'm not saying that EVR didn't give 100%. It's just, yeah, their cars just don't quite seem as suited to the circuit as AMS. They're currently P3 and P6 is AMS, whereas it's P2 and P11 for KJ and Volker. Down into turn 1, though, we've seen some good stuff from Volker, and here we go. The race lead changes once again, but there we go. We've got Knight with the position as well. He makes the move. The Grandada looking for something here as well. The camera hasn't quite updated yet, and Kart almost loses 3 positions as Knight takes the race lead. He got a little bit of momentum, and managed to make the move on Volker as well. So Knight from P3 goes up to P1 in the single corner in the most popular overtaking section on the circuit, and Lacey got overtaken by Misha. So Misha potentially on a comeback here, but we'll have to have a look at what the tyres are right now, so we could potentially get some idea of what's happened and who's on fresher laps. So our top 9 are all on pretty much the same amount of laps. Bibbin pitting only a few laps ago, only 6 laps ago on his mediums. And that's kind of the only thing to really worry about at the moment. We do have 3-second time penalties for the Grandada, Misha and Lacey. And of course 9 seconds for Bibbin and 3 seconds for Flame. Out onto the main straight we go once again. Lap 30 of 36. We have 7 to go. And into turn 1 again. Any action happening here? Volker, maybe a late lunge there. There's the move from Kart and the Grandada. The Grandada swerving back to the outside for the next corner. And nothing's happened there. They're all still nip and tuck. Although the Sauber and the Alpine are side by side. This is potentially a position change for Lacey down in P5 here. And he's got the move done under DRS though. Will he manage to hold on to that position? Going slightly defensive just to make sure he can cover that inside line. Just in case the Alpine gets a good exit out of that final corner. But he did manage to hold on to that position regardless, and it is still Knight in the race lead. Volker P2, Kart P3, the Grandada, Lacey and Misha rounding out your top 6. Feels like we've got the middle section, you know, sectors 1 and 2 to kind of, or sectors 2 and 3 I should say rather, that kind of, you know, give us time to relax. Just recover, and then we head into turn 1 again, where all the action happens, and it's a similar circuit to such as I'm not falling asleep because of the action. The action's been amazing. Falling asleep because I've had a long day. What's going to be long as well is the straight. It is a long straight, plenty of opportunity for Kart to get by Volker. Same for the Grandada. Bit of movement between Misha and Lacey further back, but again they stay in pretty much the same position. Volker and Kart getting alongside, but nothing happening there. And looks like KJ managed to get back to the session again. P11 for him, as we now head into turn number 4 for the 31st time. We have 6 laps to go. Well, to be honest, I should do those. What do you call those? I wouldn't quite call it a landmark, but you know where the F1 has like 10 laps to go announcement on the board, 5 laps to go, 3 laps to go. I don't know why they don't have that on the menu here, but I guess, you know, commentator could always call it out. But yeah, so next lap we'll do the first of those. Although to be fair, I always say I'm going to do it and then I completely forget because the action is too good into the final lap. Although I do always get that one. I always do get the final lap down. The massive announcement at the end. Final lap to go. Yeah, probably a little more excited than that. A little less lofty. Well, that's rich coming from a guy that operates at a usual altitude of 6'7". 0.2 seconds here. These guys are of course operating at an altitude of 2,000 meters, so those engines are struggling slightly, but of course they are built to quite a high standard, so they will do they'll still do better than many cars, but you know, there is still that altitude factor, less oxygen, less cooling on the engines. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Into the final 5 laps we go. There we go. A little late on the announcement, apologies. 5 laps to go officially, everyone. We have got Knight in the race lead still, Volker P2 and Kart in P3. Again, the QSL in the podium positions. We haven't seen this in a very long time. Well, we saw this last week, but unfortunately on the final lap, Gabza crashed out, allowing some of the other drivers past. So, oh my goodness, move position there for Kart. Yes, the Grandada takes the opportunity, and so does Lacey, still alongside as they head out of turn 15. And Lacey has to drop back, and Kart is given multiple warning penalty. And there we go, Lacey takes the position as well. That one mistake from the Haas has allowed the other drivers, almost 3 drivers now into turn 1. Is it going to be 3? Is Misha going to make the position? Look at how tight Lacey is trying to squeeze him into turn 1, but there's nothing he can do. Round the outside he goes, into the right-hander, down the inside for the left-hander. Kart back up into P4. Almost lost 3 positions thanks to a single mistake, but has only lost 2. Well, I should say 1 because of it now. He's made that position back on Lacey. To the Grandada then in the final podium position. And Volker in the race lead. Oh my goodness, and there we go. Kart once again going wide as this is tyres finally showing that they've got nothing left on them, that they are tired. Yes, he's sliding all over the place. Of course, the first time that you do slide, the first time that you overheat those tyres, things then just snowball from there. Your tyres are going to be over temperature into the next corner. If you then slide there as well because of that, they're going to be more over temperature into the next corner. It just gets worse and worse and worse. And that seems to be the case with this Haas right now. But thanks to all this happening, Volker, Knight and the Grandada have pulled away from this group now. Lacey 1.6 seconds off of this group. They're outside that DRS window heading into the final 3 laps of the race. And we could still see some positions here. Kart making the move on Lacey. Misha also getting involved. Still stuck behind Kart though. Can't quite make his move round the outside into turn 1. And he has to concede for P5. Lacey loses 2 positions there. And it's about half a second between Volker, Knight and the Grandada. Woo! Heating up. Heating up. Let's have a quick look at the penalties so that we're all up to date on what's happening there. Only 3-second penalties for those drivers in the top 6. And we've got the Grandada, Kart, Misha and Lacey all with 3-second time penalties. So they need to keep it clean here into the final 3 laps of the race if they want to keep the finishing order as is. Still 0.4 seconds here between these guys. Nothing really on the cards here. And the championship battle between EVR and AMS will, of course, be closing up again with this points finish. AMS maybe gaining slightly, ever so slightly, on the championship leaders out into the main straight. 0.3 seconds. Here we go. Knight 0.2 seconds off of Volker. He's gaining, he's gaining, he's gaining. We've got the other EVR out on track right in front of these guys as well, being blue flagged at the moment. So some good stuff from those back markers allowing the drives through, but they've caught them on a really awkward point, and the Grandada's fallen behind. Half a second has turned into 8/10 now, just within a second. He just needs to try and keep hold of that 1 second window so that he's still got that DRS. Misha ahead of Lacey, still Kart still in P4 as well. It's not too much movement actually into the final 2 laps of the race. However, we've only got 2 more sectors before we hit the final lap, so we've actually got 5 sectors here to go before the race end. Volker leads, Knight in P2 with Grandada in P3. Kart in P4. Kart receives a 3-second time penalty, so he will be demoted behind Misha and Lacey. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier about not getting any penalties heading into the final 3 laps of the race, and the Grandada's caught up to the back of Knight and Volker. He's taken care of his tyres really well, and as a result, he seems to be gaining on these guys. Here we go, final lap of the race. 0.2 seconds between Lacey and Misha down into turn 1. There's got to be something happening there, but there's also something happening here for the race lead as Knight takes the race lead. from Volker for potentially the final time this evening down into turn 1. Volker still maintains P2 though, so it's not too bad at the moment. Misha makes a position on Lacey. Lacey drops as well. Kart still in P4. We've got a caution in Sector 1, and that was Vaco and Flame tangling potentially. But it's still Knight in the race lead, and look at how close these guys are, battling through turns 4 to 6, and they are neck in neck. They are bumper to bumper as they head out of turn 4, now through the S's for the final time. Sector 1 completed for the final time this race, 36 of 36, and they are very close to each other, 0.1 seconds here. Could we see a desperate lunge into turn 12? This is pretty much the final good opportunity. It is the McLaren round the outside into turn 12, and he does make that position, but it's off circuit. Will he have to give that position back? He's on the defensive now to the left hand of the Grandada, also looking to get involved, and the McLaren has made that position into turn 12. A final move into the right-hander, and he holds on to that position, and Volker wins the Mexico Grand Prix. And for EVR, he has managed a hat-trick of victories for the team. Knight achieving a 6th podium for AMS, and the Grandada taking his 3rd podium of the season for himself and for the team. Incredible stuff. And Alberto, look at where Alberto came out after all his penalties got applied. Probably the best result for the Red Bull. Alberto in P4. What a day for DLX. Unfortunately, their other car did not manage to get up onto the grid, but Alberto has had a good day at least. Your podium finishes then. Volker, Knight and the Grandada. These drivers have all been on the podium before. They've seen it all before. But today, the battling that we've seen here, that final move into turn 12 round the outside was incredible, and I haven't seen that much this season. We've had some good last lap scraps, and this was also a great one. One to put down in the history books. 3 wins in a row for EVR. And there we go. That concludes round 10 of the Season 8 Championship here at EML F1. Volker takes a 3rd race win in a row for EVR. They are now on fire. Knight once again picking up a podium for AMS. And of course, we don't forget the Grandada driving for F1AF, picking up their 3rd podium of the season. Alberto in P4 and Misha rounding out your top 5. We've got a 1-week break, so join us in 2 weeks, 7 PM British summertime, not GMT, summertime, for round 11 of the Season 8 Championship in Austin, Texas. Hopefully, we'll see you all there. Good night.